Let's jump right into this explainer. Imagine, just for a second, a genuinely cinematic, totally terrifying tale of a gruesome serial killer. He's lurking in an ancient forest, hunting down his final victim to complete this impossibly dark tally. Honestly, it sounds exactly like the plot of a modern psychological thriller, right? But surprisingly, this is actually one of the most foundational stories in Buddhist scripture. Today, we're going to explore a truly remarkable journey. It starts with this ancient, blood-soaked myth and ends up, of all places, in the harsh, fluorescent-lit corridors of modern British prisons. We're going to see exactly how a 2,500-year-old story about a notorious murderer literally became the blueprint for a nationwide prison chaplaincy. So let's dive into how our central figure got his terrifying name in the first place. The man in our ancient story is known as Angulimala, and that translates directly to finger garland or finger necklace. And this wasn't some poetic metaphor. After killing his victims, he actually tried hanging their right-hand little fingers on a tree, but the birds kept stealing them. So his gruesome solution was to string those bloody fingers onto a cord and wear them right around his own neck. It is a deeply chilling image for sure, but it begs the question, how does a human being actually get to this point? Well, the real tragedy of Angulimala is that he wasn't born a monster. Not at all. He was actually the son of a well-to-do family, a genuinely brilliant scholar at the University of Taxila. The texts describe this place essentially as the Oxbridge of ancient India. But his massive success made his peers wildly jealous, so they conspired to poison his teacher's mind against him. And it worked. His corrupted teacher ends up demanding an impossible, downright horrifying graduation fee, 1,000 human right-hand little fingers. Now, instead of just giving up and quietly going home, this young, incredibly driven student actually sets out to pay the fee. But he quickly realizes, of course, that people don't exactly willingly hand over their fingers. So he's forced into violence. He completely transforms from an elite scholar into a violent outcast. And that brings us to a moment of intense cinematic suspense. Angulimala, who is now this powerful, highly athletic serial killer who's evaded all capture, is peering out from his lair. Around his neck hangs exactly 999 little fingers. He literally only needs one more to complete his score and finally pay off this tragic debt. And it's at this exact moment that he spots his final target walking towards him, the Buddha. Grabbing his weapons, Angulimala dashes out to commit his final murder. Now, this next part brilliantly illustrates the jarring juxtaposition between these two figures. Angulimala completely expected to easily overtake his target. Yet, a really strange thing happened. Despite his formidable strength, despite a frantic, exhausted sprint that left him totally soaked with sweat, Angulimala simply couldn't catch up. Meanwhile, the Buddha was just engaged in a completely serene, unhurried walk. It's amazing. The panicked violence of the killer was entirely neutralized by the complete, unbothered peace of the monk. Totally frustrated, angry, and physically spent, Angulimala screams at the Buddha to stop. The Buddha turns around, showing absolutely zero anger or fear, and delivers this profound reply. I have stopped. I have stopped killing and harming, and now it is time for you to do likewise. The text tells us that Angulimala was so utterly struck by these words that he instantly stopped, right then and there. He threw away his weapons, followed the Buddha back to the monastery, and literally became a monk. The shockwaves from this event were massive. A bit later, the very pious local king, who had no idea this transformation had happened, rides out with his troops to arrest the dreaded Angulimala. When the king stops to pay his respects to the Buddha actually asks him how he'd react if he found the killer sitting right there among the monks. The king thought the idea was unbelievable, but said, well, if it were true, he'd absolutely pay his respects. The Buddhist simply points and shows him that Angulimala is sitting right there. Once the king recovers from his absolute shock, he utters this incredible quote. What we have tried to do by force and with weapons, you have done with neither force nor weapons. And you know what? Over time, Angulimala actually succeeded in purging his mind of all greed, hatred, and delusion, ultimately achieving enlightenment. So, the absolutely crucial takeaway here is that this ancient myth teaches us something vital. It shows us that radical, extreme transformation is totally possible, even in the darkest, most desperate of circumstances. And importantly, it demonstrates that people are best influenced by persuasion and profound example, rather than by sheer force and weapons. Definitely keep that lesson in mind, because it is exactly what inspired a massive modern movement. A modern chaplaincy, putting the myth to work. Let's see how this ancient lesson translates to the modern day. To do that, we're transitioning from the ancient forests of India straight to the concrete and steel of 1970s London to meet Venerable Ajahn Kammadhammo. Back in 1971, at just 27 years old, he abandoned a promising career as an English actor and actually traveled to Thailand to become a forest monk under a great Buddhist master. And this whole movement, it started with just a few desperate letters. In 1977, his teacher, Ajahn Chah, visited London, and our former actor accompanied him. While they were staying in Hampstead, letters began arriving from Pentonville and Parkhurst prisons, desperately asking for a Buddhist visiting minister. During the weekend of the Queen's Silver Jubilee, while sitting together on a train, he asks his teacher what to do about these requests. The master answers with a single word: go. And he's literally been going ever since. This solitary mission of hitchhiking from prison to prison officially evolved into the founding of the Angulimala Buddhist Prison Chaplaincy in 1985. Today, the scale of this organization is absolutely incredible. Officially recognized by the government, it serves as the religious consultative service for Buddhism. They operate with over 50 active chaplains across roughly 120 penal establishments in England and Wales. And what's really brilliant here is how they manage the vast diversity of Buddhist practices. They consciously offer a basic, universal Buddhism, accommodating everyone without favoring any one specific school. They've become entirely integrated into the prison service, which remarkably even contributes to its funding. To maintain a massive network like this, they hold quarterly workshops with a very specific practical structure. They focus deeply on how to actually apply Buddhist teachings in a prison setting. They bring in heavy-hitting guest speakers, everyone from prison officers to former directors general, just to ensure the chaplains deeply understand how prisons are actually run day to day. And then they do a report-in to discuss the realities on the ground. It is a highly organized effort to equip their team for what is, let's face it, one of the toughest environments imaginable. The mirror of isolation. Let's dive into the psychological reality of what's happening behind those walls. I want you to genuinely ponder this surprising connection. What does a secluded forest monk in Thailand actually have in common with a modern prisoner locked up in England? When the founder of this chaplaincy first got those letters in 1977, he had to ask himself this very same question. I mean, he had never been incarcerated. He'd never even set foot inside a prison. He wasn't even sure he'd ever seen one from the outside. Just look at the stark structural contrast between their two realities. On one hand, monastic seclusion is a choice, right? A monk is equipped with this whole armory of meditation tools and the wisdom of great teachers to help them navigate their own mind. Prison incarceration, however, is forced. It's confinement without those psychological tools to cope, and often utterly lacking in any kind of meaningful guidance. Yet when the founder really sat down to think about it, he realized a profound truth, and it's captured perfectly in this quote. I had also spent quite a lot of my time shut away in small rooms, and I too had had to face myself in that solitude. This brilliantly bridges the gap. The architecture of their isolation might be totally different. One is voluntary, one is punitive, but the raw human struggle of being trapped in a small room and forced to face the reality of your own mind, that is exactly the same. Sitting completely alone with yourself is, honestly, profoundly uncomfortable. It breeds a deep sense of unease. But it's precisely that unease that forces a person to look beyond their narrow physical confines for real answers. The founder realized that the ancient Buddhist techniques he learned in the forest were exactly the proven escape routes needed to find secure, lasting peace inside a prison cell. Taking the temple inside, moving these concepts from theory into practice. Now, this realization sparks the ultimate uplifting takeaway of our explainer today. The core Buddhist attitude here is incredibly respectful. They absolutely do not force their beliefs on anyone. They only speak about Buddhism when asked. However, they believe deeply in their responsibility to make these teachings available to those who are suffering. As the founder explains, while most people can just freely walk into a temple to find peace, a prisoner obviously cannot. Therefore, the only logical, compassionate solution is to take the temple directly to them. The reality is that society demands penalties for offenses. And yes, prisons do exist. But the chaplains of Angulimala believe it's an immense, tragic shame to simply let human life waste away. Their ultimate goals aren't to judge. They're there to alleviate the daily, crushing suffering of incarceration. They're there to offer hope for a happier future, helping prisoners salvage something positive from their predicament. Basically, they are ensuring that this locked-away time becomes an opportunity for radical internal transformation, just exactly like the serial killer Angulimala experienced thousands of years ago. So I want to leave you with this deeply provocative question, one asked directly by the founder of this remarkable chaplaincy. When we strip away the steel bars and the concrete walls, aren't we all imprisoned by our greed, our aversion, our ignorance, and our attachments? It really forces us to turn the mirror onto ourselves. Perhaps the techniques used to free the minds of those in physical prisons are the exact same tools we need to escape the invisible prisons of our own making. Think about that, and maybe ask yourself, what tools might you need to break free?